The massive doors of Galactic Council Station Harmony 7 slid open with a quiet hiss. Ambassador Rebecca Morgan walked through confidently, her black shoes clicking against the shiny metal floor. Next to her, a golden-colored dog trotted happily, his tail wagging back and forth like a flag in the wind. The dog's name was Apollo, and he seemed very pleased to be there. The alien delegates did not share his happiness. Council member Vixler was the first to react. He was an insect-like creature, about as tall as a human, with a hard shell that looked like polished armor. When he saw Apollo, he jumped backwards so fast that he knocked over a stand holding electronic tablets. The tablets clattered across the floor. Another delegate, called Harmon, began flashing bright colors. Harmon looked like a floating jellyfish made of crystal, and his translator device announced the colors meant alarm and panic and horror all at once. A third delegate, one of the Minari people who had long tentacles and glowing spots on their skin, pressed themselves flat against the far wall. Rebecca stopped walking. She looked around at the frightened aliens with confusion on her face. Vixler's voice came through a small device that translated his clicking sounds into words everyone could understand. His voice shook slightly. "Ambassador Morgan, you have brought a predator into these chambers." Rebecca blinked twice, not understanding. "I am sorry, what did you say?" "The creature," Vixler said, his antennae shaking. "The fang beast walking beside you. Is this some kind of threat? Are you trying to scare us?" Rebecca looked down at Apollo. At that exact moment, Apollo sat down and used his back leg to scratch behind his ear. He looked about as threatening as a pillow. "This is Apollo," Rebecca said slowly. "He is my emotional support animal. He helps me feel calm." The word support seemed to confuse them even more. Harmon floated closer but kept a safe distance. "You require support from a predator? This makes no sense." "He is a dog," Rebecca explained, speaking even more slowly now. "A domestic dog. Did no one tell you about Earth animals before I arrived?" Vixler touched a device on his arm, and a glowing screen appeared in the air. His many eyes moved rapidly as he read information. "According to our biology reports, the species called dog descended from apex predators that your people call wolves. These wolves have powerful jaws that can bite with over 300 pounds of force. They hunt in groups. They kill prey much larger than themselves." Rebecca started to speak, but Vixler continued. "And you brought one here. To a diplomatic meeting. On a space station." Vixler's antennae had stopped shaking, but now they stood straight up, which might have meant surprise or shock. Harmon's crystal body pulsed with light. "Are all humans this reckless? This feral?" Vixler added quietly. Rebecca felt her jaw muscles tighten. She did not like being called feral. She took a breath to stay calm, then spoke clearly. "Apollo, sit." The dog was already sitting, but he straightened up and looked at her with full attention. "Stay," Rebecca commanded. Apollo did not move. His brown eyes remained locked on Rebecca's face. "Shake," she said, holding out her hand. Apollo lifted his right paw and placed it in her hand. Rebecca shook his paw like she was greeting an old friend. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small treat. Apollo took it from her fingers very gently, barely touching her skin with his teeth. His tail wagged the entire time. Nobody in the council chamber made a sound. Finally, Vixler spoke in a whisper. "You commanded it." With only single words. "Of course I did," Rebecca said, sounding tired. "He is trained. All dogs are trained." "Trained," Harmon repeated, as if hearing a new word for the first time. "You took a predator species and taught it to obey you?" "Yes. We domesticated wolves about 30,000 years ago." Rebecca spoke like a teacher explaining something simple. "This happened before we invented writing. Before we built cities. Even before we learned to grow crops in fields. Dogs have been our companions and friends longer than we have had written history." The Minari delegate finally found courage to speak. Their voice trembled. "No species in the entire known galaxy has ever domesticated a carnivore. Not one. The risk is far too great. The aggression, the hunting instincts, the violence, these things cannot be overcome or controlled." Apollo must have heard the fear in the Minari's voice. He made a soft whining sound, the kind of sound dogs make when they are worried. Rebecca immediately placed her hand on top of Apollo's head. She did not say anything. She just touched him gently. Apollo stopped whining. His breathing slowed. He relaxed completely, leaning his weight against Rebecca's leg. Every alien in the room watched this happen. Vixler tilted his head, studying them. "Every species in this council evolved in one of two ways. We either evolved past our predators by becoming smarter, or we evolved away from them by going to places they could not follow. We built walls to keep the dangerous things out. We built weapons to kill them from far away. We built technology to protect ourselves. He paused, his compound eyes still fixed on Apollo. But humans did something different. Humans invited the dangerous things inside. Humans made them into family. Rebecca's expression softened. He is family, she said quietly but firmly. At that moment, something unexpected happened. The VRNN delegate, who had been silent and hiding in the corner, began to move forward. The VRNN looked like a large rabbit with gray fur and huge eyes. They moved very slowly, their long ears flat against their head. May I approach the predator? The VRNN asked in a tiny voice. Rebecca looked down at Apollo. Apollo, be gentle now. The VRNN came closer, step by tiny step. They reached out one paw, which was shaking badly. Apollo leaned forward and licked the VRNN's paw one single time, very carefully and softly. The VRNN's eyes rolled back and they fainted, falling to the floor. Medical staff rushed into the room immediately. They carried emergency equipment and began checking the VRNN's vital signs. The VRNN was breathing fine, they had just fainted from shock and surprise. While this happened, Vixler's antennae began moving in a new pattern. Rebecca's cultural database device buzzed and informed her that this pattern meant laughter. Vixler looked at Rebecca, then at Apollo, then back at Rebecca. Ambassador Morgan, I believe your people are going to be very interesting members of this council. You are slightly feral perhaps, but I think. Rebecca smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. She continued scratching behind Apollo's soft ears. We prefer to think of it as having heart. Vixler watched the human and her predator companion. Even with his alien mind, he could see the bond between them clearly. It was obvious in how they stood together, how they moved together, how they responded to each other without words. Yes, Vixler said thoughtfully, his voice quiet. I believe that having heart is precisely what this galaxy has been missing for a very long time. Apollo's tail wagged harder, and he looked up at Rebecca with pure love in his eyes. 3 months had passed since Ambassador Rebecca Morgan first brought Apollo to the Council station. Now, humanity was offering something new to the Galactic Council: military training assistance. Captain James Carter stepped off the transport ship onto the military training facility on the moon called Training Ground 7. Behind him, his partner Max walked calmly. Max was a German shepherd with black and tan fur, alert eyes, and ears that stood straight up like radar dishes. The alien trainees were already waiting in the training yard. There were about 20 of them from different species. When they saw Max, several of them stepped backward. James noticed this but said nothing. He simply walked to the center of the yard with Max at his side. Good morning, James said, his voice carrying across the open space. I am Captain James Carter and this is Max. We are here to show you something that humans have been doing for thousands of years. Officer Kendra, a VRNN with soft gray fur and large frightened eyes, raised her paw slightly. Captain, why did you bring a predator to a training facility? Because predators make excellent partners, James answered simply. He touched a control on his wrist, and a holographic display appeared in the air. Images of different dogs filled the screen, tiny ones, huge ones, fluffy ones, thin ones. Humans bred wolves into hundreds of specialized forms over 10,000 years. Each type of dog was designed for specific tasks. The images continued cycling. Dogs herding sheep. Dogs pulling sleds. Dogs finding people buried in snow. Dogs detecting explosives. Dogs guiding blind humans. You shaped predators like tools? Kendra said softly. No, James corrected her immediately. Not tools. Partners. Watch. He walked to the far end of the training yard where someone had set up an obstacle course. There were walls to climb, tunnels to crawl through, and a maze of barrels and boxes. Max, seek, James commanded. Max put his nose to the ground and began moving through the course. His nose worked constantly, sniffing left and right. He moved with purpose, clearly following something the aliens could not see or smell. After 2 minutes, Max stopped at a specific barrel and sat down. He barked once. James walked over and opened the barrel. Inside was a small electronic device. Max just tracked a scent through a complicated path and found the target, James explained. He did this using abilities humans do not have. We cannot smell like he can. Vixler, who was observing from a raised platform, leaned forward. But wolves hunt in packs. They follow an alpha leader. You maintained this instinct. We enhanced it, James said. Max does not just obey blindly. He thinks. He makes decisions. He adapts to new situations. I guide him, but he is not a machine that only follows programs. James demonstrated more skills. He showed how Max could protect him from an attack by a padded trainer. He showed how Max could search a building and indicate when he found something dangerous. He showed how Max understood not just words but also hand signals and even facial expressions. Then James said something that made everyone go quiet. Humans also domesticated cats. These are smaller apex predators with hunting instincts as strong as any wolf. We domesticated them purely for companionship, for love, for emotional comfort. Harmon, the crystalline being, flickered with confused colors. You bond with predators for emotional reasons only? Not for work or protection. Now you understand humans, James said with a smile. The training continued for several hours. James taught the aliens basic commands. He showed them how to read Max's body language, his tail position, his ear position, his posture. He explained that working with dogs meant building trust and communication. During one training scenario, something went wrong. A structural support beam that was supposed to be locked in place came loose. It began falling toward the training area where Kendra was standing. Kendra froze. Her large eyes went wide. She could not move. Max moved without any command from James. The dog ran faster than seemed possible and slammed his body into Kendra, knocking her sideways. The heavy beam crashed down exactly where she had been standing 1 second earlier. Kendra lay on the ground, breathing hard. Max stood over her, tail wagging, and licked her face repeatedly. James ran over. "Are you hurt?" "No," Kendra whispered. She stared at Max with wonder in her eyes. "He saved me." "Why did he save me?" "Because you are packed now," James said gently. Kendra reached up with a shaking paw and touched Max's fur. Max leaned into her touch, his tail wagging harder. Kendra began to cry. Not from fear or pain but from amazement. Later that day, in the analysis room, military strategists from different species studied the training recordings. "This is the first recorded case of a human animal saving alien life," one analyst noted, marking the data. Another analyst pulled up historical records. Humans have over 10,000 years of experience coordinating tactics with different species. They do not just tolerate different types of minds, they instinctively understand how to work with them. Harmon was present at this meeting. He watched the recording of Max saving Kendra again and again. "They are not just survivors," he said quietly. "Humans are specialists in pack bonding. This is their evolutionary advantage." Back on the training ground, something beautiful was happening. Kendra had asked if she could spend more time with Max. James agreed immediately. Now Kendra sat on the ground with Max lying next to her. She ran her paws through his fur slowly. Max's eyes were half closed in contentment. His tail thumped against the ground steadily. "I was terrified of you this morning," Kendra told Max. "I thought you would hurt me. But you protected me instead. You did not even know me, but you protected me anyway." Max yawned and rolled onto his back, asking for belly rubs. Kendra laughed, a sound that surprised her because she had not laughed in months. She rubbed Max's belly and the dog made happy groaning sounds. James watched from a distance, not interrupting. He saw other alien trainees edging closer, curiosity beginning to overcome their fear. Vixler approached James on the observation platform. "Your species has given us something remarkable, Captain Carter. Not weapons or technology." "What have we given you?" James asked. "Hope that different minds can work together," Vixler answered. "Every species in the Council works with their own kind. We cooperate with aliens when necessary, but we do not truly bond. We do not make family from strangers." He gestured toward Kendra and Max, "But humans do this naturally. You look at something different and dangerous and you see potential for friendship." James smiled. "Max is dangerous, yes. He could hurt someone badly if he wanted to. But he does not want to. We raised him with love and he gives love back." "Slightly feral," Vixler said. "But full of heart," James finished. Down in the training yard, more aliens were gathering around Max now. The dog was surrounded by different species, all of them reaching out to touch his fur, all of them learning that predators could be friends. Max's tail never stopped wagging. The colony ship, New Horizons, appeared on the long-range scanners of Council Station Harmony 7. The ship was enormous, designed to carry 5,000 human colonists to a new world. Before the Council would approve their settlement, inspectors had to examine the ship and make sure it met all safety standards. Inspector Vixler led the inspection team. With him came Dr. Theron, the Council's expert in alien psychology. Dr. Theron had 6 eyes arranged around his head and thin arms that could bend in multiple directions. He carried several datapads to record his observations. Captain Helen Bradford met them at the airlock. She was a tall woman with gray hair tied back in a practical bun. Her uniform was clean but worn from years of space travel. "Welcome aboard," Helen said warmly. "Please follow me. I will show you everything you need to see." The inspection began in the residential sections. Everything seemed normal at first. The living quarters were small but comfortable. The medical bay was well equipped. The food production area used hydroponic gardens and protein synthesis machines. Then Helen led them to the cargo bays. Vixler stopped walking so suddenly that Dr. Theron bumped into him from behind. The cargo bay was divided into dozens of sections, each one carefully climate-controlled. In these sections were animals. Many animals. There were dogs of different sizes and colors. There were cats, some sleeping in sunny spots created by artificial lights. There were horses standing in specially designed stalls that adjusted for the ship's rotation. There were birds singing in large enclosures. There were rabbits, guinea pigs, and even tanks with fish swimming in them. "You brought predators and prey species?" Vixler's antennae waved wildly. "On the same ship? Together?" "They have been traveling together for 2 years without any problems," Helen said calmly. Dr. Theron's 6 eyes blinked in different patterns, which meant he was deeply confused. "But why bring them at all? Animals take up space. They require food and water and medical care. They serve no purpose in a colony." Helen looked surprised by this question. "They serve every purpose. Our children grow up with these animals. Playing with them teaches empathy. Caring for them teaches responsibility. Loving them teaches compassion." They walked deeper into the cargo bay. In one section, reptiles basked under heat lamps. In another, insects lived in carefully maintained terrariums. "You even brought insects?" Dr. Theron asked, his voice going higher. "Deliberately?" "These are pollinators," Helen explained. "Bees and butterflies. They will help our crops grow. But also, people find them beautiful." A young girl appeared from behind a stack of supply crates. She looked about 8 years old with brown hair and 2 braids. She carried a small cage made of wire. "Mama, Professor Whiskers was hungry, so I gave him some apple pieces," the girl said to a woman working nearby. Then she noticed the alien visitors and smiled. "Hello. Do you want to meet my pet?" She held up the cage. Inside was a rat. Not a fancy alien creature, but a common brown rat with a twitching pink nose and a long tail. Dr. Theron made a choking sound. "That is a pest species. A disease carrier. A creature that eats food supplies and damages equipment." The little girl's smile disappeared. She pulled the cage closer to her chest protectively. "Professor Whiskers is not a pest. He is my friend. He is very smart and knows 5 tricks, and he likes having his belly rubbed." "Emma," Helen said gently, "these visitors are not used to humans keeping rats as pets." "Why not?" Emma asked, genuinely confused. "Rats are wonderful. Professor Whiskers learns his name and comes when I call him. He grooms himself cleaner than I brush my teeth. And he makes happy chirping sounds when he is content." To demonstrate, Emma opened the cage door. The rat climbed onto her shoulder and pressed his face against her cheek. Emma giggled. The rat made small chirping sounds that did indeed sound happy. Dr. Theron stared at this scene. His datapad hung forgotten in his hand. "Humans pack bond with anything," he whispered. "I had heard reports, but I did not believe them. You do not just bond with predators. You bond with prey animals. With pest species. With anything that lives. Why wouldn't we?" Emma asked simply. "Everything deserves love." The inspection continued. Vixler documented everything he saw with growing amazement. Humans had brought earth plants, flowers that served no purpose except being pretty. They had brought beneficial bacteria cultures to help with digestion and soil health. They had brought samples of Earth soil containing millions of microscopic organisms. In one section, Helen showed them the ship's garden. Vegetables grew in rows, but between the rows were flowers. Bees flew from blossom to blossom. A cat napped in a warm corner. A dog lay under a tree watching everything with calm eyes. "You do not just colonize new worlds," Dr. Theron said slowly, understanding dawning in his mind. "You transplant entire ecosystems. You bring communities of life with you." Earth was a harsh planet, Helen explained. They sat down on a bench near the garden. Early humans faced predators, diseases, starvation, and weather that could kill. We survived not by conquering nature but by joining it. We learned to see ourselves as part of a web of life, not separate from it. A butterfly landed on Vixler's antenna. He froze, afraid to move. "It will not hurt you," Helen said softly. "It thinks you are a flower." The butterfly stayed for several seconds, its delicate wings opening and closing slowly. Then it flew away to find real flowers. Vixler watched it go. Every species in the council separates themselves from nature. We build sterile stations and cities. We eliminate variables. We control everything. Does that make you happy? Helen asked. Vixler thought about this question for a long time. No, he finally admitted. It does not. Emma appeared again, this time with Professor Whiskers riding on her shoulder. 3 other children followed her, 2 human kids and 1 young VRNN who had been living on the station. Can we show them the puppies? Emma asked Helen. Please? The puppies are so cute and they need to see them. Helen smiled. Go ahead. The children ran off, laughing together. The young VRNN ran just as fast as the human children, no longer afraid. Dr. Theron pulled out his datapad and began writing his report. Humans do not conquer environments, he typed. They join them. They build families from whatever they find around them. This is not a weakness. This is a survival strategy unprecedented in galactic history. He looked up at Helen. You call this being feral, but I see something else. I see wisdom that the rest of us lost somewhere in our evolution. What wisdom is that? Helen asked. That loneliness is more dangerous than any predator, Dr. Theron said. That connection is more valuable than control. The children returned with a box. Inside were 4 puppies, their eyes barely open, stumbling over each other on unsteady legs. Emma placed 1 puppy in Dr. Theron's arms without asking permission. The tiny creature was warm and soft. It made small squeaking sounds and wriggled against his chest. Dr. Theron felt something in his heart, something he had not felt in many years. It was the feeling of being needed. The feeling of being trusted. The puppy fell asleep in his arms. Oh no, Dr. Theron said softly. I am pack bonding with it. Helen laughed. Welcome to being slightly feral. Later, when Dr. Theron submitted his report to the council, he wrote, Colony ship New Horizons should be approved immediately. Humanity's approach to colonization may seem strange, but it works. They do not just survive, they thrive by building families wherever they go. Perhaps the galaxy could learn from their example. The vote was unanimous. The colony was approved. As the ship prepared to depart, Vixler stood at the viewport watching. Inside the ship he could see humans working alongside their animals. Children playing with puppies. Cats sleeping in sunny spots. Birds singing in their enclosures. Slightly feral, he said to himself, but so full of heart that they teach it to everyone around them. Mining station Perseus 9 floated in the dark space near an asteroid field. The station was home to 300 workers from 12 different species. They mined valuable metals from the asteroids and shipped them across the galaxy. It was supposed to be a safe, quiet job. Then the pirates came. Thomas Wright was in the lower mining section when the alarm started screaming. Red lights flashed throughout the station. His communication device crackled with panicked voices. Pirates? 3 ships. They are cutting through the hull. Thomas ran toward the main corridor. He was a miner who had worked in space for 10 years. He was strong from years of physical labor, but he was not a soldier. None of the miners were soldiers. His dog Bella ran beside him. Bella was an Australian cattle dog with blue-gray fur and bright, intelligent eyes. She had been bred for herding animals on Earth, but she adapted well to life in space. She wore a special vest that helped her move in low gravity. Thomas grabbed his communication device. All human personnel listen carefully. Release the cats. I repeat, release the cats. A Minari engineer's voice came back confused and frightened. Release the what? Why would we release the cats? Just do it. Thomas shouted. Trust me. Across the station, in the environmental control sections, storage areas and maintenance tunnels, humans opened special doors. Behind these doors lived the station's pest control team, 24 cats that had been specially bred and trained for zero-gravity environments. The cats poured out into the corridors like a furry flood. Meanwhile, the pirates finished cutting through the hull. The breach alarm screamed even louder. Air rushed out until emergency force fields activated. Then the pirates came inside. There were 30 pirates, all wearing armor and carrying weapons. They were led by Captain Vrax, a scarred veteran who had raided dozens of stations. This should have been an easy job. Mining stations never had strong defenses. The pirates spread through the corridors, weapons ready, expecting frightened workers to surrender quickly. What they found instead was chaos. Cats appeared from everywhere. In zero gravity there was no up or down. The cats used this to their advantage. They launched themselves from walls, ceilings, and floors. They yowled and hissed. They scratched at armor joints. They created a swirling storm of fur and claws and angry sounds. "What are these things?" one pirate screamed, spinning in circles as three cats attacked from different directions. The cats had been trained for this. Not specifically for fighting pirates, but for working together to catch fast-moving targets in zero gravity. Mice and rats did not live long on stations with these cats patrolling. Pirates were slower than mice. Thomas whistled sharply, a specific pattern he had practiced many times. Bella pushed off from a wall and sailed through the air toward him. He caught her, used a handhold to change direction, and they moved through the station like a team that had trained for years. Because they had trained for years. A pirate spotted a VRNN worker named Kendra trying to hide behind some equipment. The pirate raised his weapon. His finger moved toward the trigger. Bella saw this. Without waiting for a command from Thomas, she launched herself through the air. Her teeth clamped onto the pirate's arm. In zero gravity, this sent both of them spinning wildly through the corridor. The pirate dropped his weapon. Bella let go and pushed off his chest, sailing back toward Thomas. The pirate continued spinning, screaming in fear and confusion. Thomas made hand signals, quick gestures that meant different things. The cats, watching from various positions throughout the corridor, recognized these signals. They had been trained to understand basic commands. The cats began herding the pirates. Like sheepdogs herding sheep on ancient Earth, these cats worked together to push the pirates in one specific direction. When a pirate tried to go left, a cat blocked that path. When a pirate tried to go right, another cat appeared. The pirates panicked. These were hardened criminals who had fought security forces before, but they had never faced anything like this. How could you fight enemies that came from every direction? How could you aim at targets that moved so fast and so unpredictably? "Retreat!" Captain Vrax shouted. "Back to the ships." But Thomas was ready for this. "Now!" he yelled into his communication device. Human miners throughout the station pressed buttons. Emergency bulkheads, thick metal doors designed to seal sections during hull breaches, slammed shut. The pirates were trapped in one long corridor with no way out. They pressed against the transparent barrier, looking through at the humans on the other side. Thomas stood there calmly. Bella sat beside him, tail wagging, tongue hanging out happily. Around them, cats groomed themselves and purred, suddenly calm now that the excitement was over. Thomas pulled treats from his pocket and gave them to Bella and the nearby cats. He scratched behind Bella's ears and spoke to her in a soft, gentle voice. "Good girl. Such a good girl. You protected Kendra. I am so proud of you." Captain Vrax stared through the barrier. His face showed complete confusion. "What are these humans?" he whispered to his crew. "Those creatures just attacked us like trained soldiers. But now the humans are petting them and giving them food and speaking to them like babies." "They are Demon World Pack Hunters," another pirate said, his voice shaking. The rumors were true. Humans travel with coordinated predator swarms. When Council security forces arrived 30 minutes later, they found the pirates babbling about monsters from Earth, and animals that hunt in teams, and humans who command beasts with whistles. Commander Willis, who led the security team, was human. She looked at the scene and smiled. "Good work, Thomas." "Could not have done it without Bella and the cats," Thomas said, scratching Bella's head. Commander Willis knelt down and let Bella lick her face. She pulled out treats and distributed them to all the cats, who lined up politely to receive them. The alien security officers watched this with amazement. The humans had just used animals to defeat armed pirates, but now they treated these same animals like beloved children. Vixler, who had come with the security team, recorded everything carefully. "This will be in my official report," he said. "Humanity's slight ferality makes them unpredictable and extremely dangerous to threaten. Their animals do not just obey commands. They cooperate. They think. They protect not just their human partners but any innocent being in danger." Kendra approached Thomas nervously. "Your dog saved my life. She did not have to, but she did." "Why?" Thomas looked surprised by the question. "Because you are part of the station crew. That makes you pack. Bella protects her pack. But I am not human. I am not even from Earth." "Bella does not care about that," Thomas said simply. "Neither do I." Kendra reached out slowly and touched Bella's head. Bella leaned into the touch, tail wagging. News of what happened at mining station Perseus 9 spread quickly through criminal networks. Within 3 weeks, pirate attacks near human settlements dropped by 80%. Pirates talked to each other in dark stations and hidden bases. They warned each other about humans. Do not attack places where humans live. They travel with predators. The predators work together like military units. You cannot fight them because you never know where they will attack from. Some pirates thought these stories were exaggerated. Those pirates tried to raid human locations anyway. They learned the stories were not exaggerated at all. Back on Perseus 9, the station returned to normal operations. The cats went back to their regular patrols, hunting the occasional mouse that somehow got aboard. Bella followed Thomas through his workday as she always did. But now, other species on the station looked at the animals differently. They saw how the cats and dogs moved. They saw how humans communicated with them using voices, hands, and even just expressions on their faces. They began to understand that being slightly feral was not a weakness. It was a strength the galaxy had never imagined. 1 year had passed since humanity first joined the Galactic Council. In that time, humans had brought their animals, their strange customs, and their pack-bonding instincts to stations across the galaxy. Not everyone was happy about this. The Grand Council chamber was filled with delegates from 200 species. They had gathered for an important vote. The question was simple but serious. Should humanity remain a member of the Galactic Council, or were they too dangerous, too unpredictable, too feral? Ambassador Rebecca Morgan stood at the speaker's platform. Apollo sat beside her as always, his golden fur brushed and shining under the chamber lights. His therapy dog vest was clearly visible. The council chair, an ancient being whose species had founded the council thousands of years ago, spoke in a deep voice. Ambassador Morgan, you may present humanity's case. Rebecca took a deep breath. Her hands shook slightly but her voice was steady. Thank you. I know many of you are afraid of my people. I understand why. We are different from every other species here. She activated a holographic display. Images appeared in the air above the chamber floor. My people have a violent history, Rebecca continued. We fought terrible wars. We conquered each other's lands. We hurt each other in ways that still bring us shame. We were, as you say, feral creatures who could not control our aggressive instincts. The images showed human history, battles, weapons, destruction. Many delegates nodded. This confirmed what they already believed about humans. Then the images changed. A firefighter emerged from a burning building, coughing from smoke, carrying a dog in his arms. A woman jumped into rushing floodwater to save a cat trapped on a car roof. A man sat in the snow, sharing his last piece of food with a stray dog. Humans formed long chains reaching into the ocean to help push beached whales back to sea. A little girl cried over her goldfish that had died. But we also did this, Rebecca said, her voice thick with emotion. We risked our lives for animals that could not pay us back. We went hungry to feed creatures that were not even our own species. We cried when they died. More images appeared. A soldier carrying his wounded military dog across a battlefield. An elderly woman sleeping in her car because the homeless shelter would not let her bring her cat inside. Thousands of people donating money to save pandas, tigers, and whales they would never see in person. We domesticated wolves not because we saw tools or weapons, Rebecca explained. We did it because we looked at predators, dangerous creatures that could kill us, and we saw potential friends. We saw family. The chamber was completely silent now. That is what makes humans different, Rebecca continued. We do not just survive. We connect. We bond. We build families from anything and anyone around us. Officer Kendra suddenly stood up. The VRNN looked tiny in the massive chamber, but her voice carried clearly. I request permission to speak on behalf of humanity. Surprised murmurs rippled through the delegates. The council chair nodded. You may speak. Kendra walked to the center of the floor. 1 year ago I was terrified of Earth animals. I thought they would hurt me. I could not imagine why humans would keep predators in their homes. She paused and her voice became stronger. Now I work with a rescue dog named Scout. She has saved 3 lives on Council Station Harmony 7, including my own life twice. Humans did not just teach me how to work with a predator. They taught me how to love one. Kendra looked around at all the delegates. Before humans came, I did my job and went home alone every day. I had colleagues but not friends. I had a safe life but not a happy one. Scout changed that. She needs me and I need her. That is what humans understand that we forgot. Connection matters more than safety. Dr. Theron stood next, his 6 eyes blinking in patterns that showed determination. I have studied humanity for 1 year. I have data to share. He projected statistics into the air. Stations with human populations show 47% higher morale scores. They have 23% fewer conflicts between species. They show measurably increased cooperation on difficult projects. Why? Because humans teach pack bonding. They teach connection. They teach heart. More delegates began standing. A Minari scientist spoke about how her service dog helped her navigate the station after an accident damaged her sensory organs. A crystalline being described how caring for tropical fish gave him something to look forward to each day. A young VRWN child talked about her therapy rabbit. Vixler stood last. His antennae waved in serious patterns. I have observed humanity closely for 1 year. Yes, they are slightly feral. They bring predators where others bring servants. They risk their lives for creatures that cannot speak or thank them. They choose emotional connection over logical efficiency. He paused, looking directly at Rebecca and Apollo. And that is exactly why we need them in this council. Vixler's voice grew passionate. For 10,000 years, the species of this council have grown apart from each other. We cooperate when necessary, but we do not connect. We share space but not hearts. We are safe but lonely. Humans remind us of something we lost. The knowledge that connection is what makes life worth living. The council chair called for the vote. One by one, species voted. The display showed the results in real time. Green lights for approval. Red lights for rejection. The chamber watched in tense silence. Finally, the last vote was counted. The result appeared in massive letters. Unanimous approval. But there was more. A new designation appeared beside humanity's name, Ambassadors of Pack Bonding. Rebecca felt tears running down her face. She knelt and hugged Apollo tightly. The dog licked her tears and wagged his tail so hard his whole body wiggled. The delegates began making sounds. Some clapped, some hummed, some flashed lights. Each species had their own way of celebrating, but the meaning was clear. Humanity was home. 6 months later, Council Station Harmony 7 looked completely different. 3 entire decks had been converted into an animal therapy program. Alien children played carefully with puppies under human supervision. Therapy dogs visited hospital wards. Cats lounged in common areas and station workers stopped to pet them during breaks. A Minari scientist walked confidently through the corridors with a guide dog leading her. Crystalline beings kept beautiful fish tanks in their quarters. VRWN families adopted rabbits and guinea pigs. The station psychologist reported that depression rates had dropped by 60%. Conflicts between species had almost disappeared. People smiled more. Rebecca stood at the observation deck, watching a VRWN child giggle as a golden retriever puppy licked her face. The child's parents watched nervously but did not interfere. They were learning to trust. Apollo pressed against Rebecca's leg, his tail wagging slowly. Vixler joined her at the window. You brought something precious to the stars, he said quietly. Not technology. Not weapons. Not even knowledge. You brought the ability to love across all boundaries. We are still a bit feral, Rebecca said with a smile. Yes, Vixler agreed, his antennae waving in contentment. But in a cold, vast, lonely galaxy, perhaps being feral means remembering how to feel warmth. How to build connections. How to love. Below them, dozens of species learned patience by training dogs. They learned gentleness by petting cats. They learned responsibility by caring for animals. They learned that different minds could work together in harmony. An elderly Minari sat on a bench with a cat purring in his lap. He had lived alone for 30 years. Now he talked softly to the cat, telling it about his day. The cat purred louder. A young couple from a species that normally lived solitary lives walked together, a dog between them. The dog had given them a reason to spend time together. Now they were planning to become partners. 3 children from 3 different species played fetch with a patient golden retriever. They laughed together and the sound echoed through the corridors. Rebecca watched all of this and felt her heart swell with pride. We did not bring animals to the stars, she said softly. We brought the understanding that loneliness is the worst enemy, and connection is the greatest strength. Slightly feral, Vixler said. But full of heart, Rebecca finished. Apollo barked once, a happy sound that seemed to say he agreed completely. The galaxy was still vast. It was still cold. It was still full of dangers. But now it was a little less lonely.